The number 10 bitter ending. Carolina cut Steve Smith.
Number 10. One thing you learned over Steve Smith's career was to not make him angry and don't doubt him.
Try me if you want to. You'll go broke.
It's like one guy is just taking over this 100-yard piece of land out here.
Does Steve Smith have one friend?
Hey, if you're getting nervous, you better go help his ass out. 22, yeah.
Does Steve Smith have one positive influence who's going, hey man, you're doing okay?
He was afraid of no one.
You don't want to mess with Steve Smith.
Not only that, he played better angry.
Steve Smith is the last guy in the world I would want to be angry at me.
You work with Steve Smith, and I think this is very brave for you to talk about Steve Smith.
He is loud.
You can tell me I ain't gonna be nothing.
He is an underdog.
I run this show.
He is brash.
If you see this face, that means I score.
And he is great.
Touchdown, Steve Smith. If you see this face again, that means I scored again.
Steve Smith was the heart and soul of the Panthers.
You better double cover him, triple cover him.
The grit, the grind, the guts.
He just stiff arms the mess out of Travis Daniels.
He was the face of the franchise, and what you don't want to do is give Steve Smith more reason to hate you.
Breaking news of the day, the decision by the Carolina Panthers to release the best player in franchise history, Steve Smith.
When Steve Smith was dumped by the Panthers, his famous quote was, when he plays the Panthers again, there's going to be blood and guts everywhere.
Dare I say it? You see me again.
It cost them money to let him go. This was not a cap savings move. They just decided they didn't want him there.
You just knew he's the ultimate chip on the shoulder guy. Wherever else he was going to go, he was going to make the Panthers pay.
And if you think I can't play, you're going to find out week 4.
I remember the game when the Panthers go to play the Ravens.
It was one of the best modern NFL revenge stories we've had.
Flacco lost it, far sideline. Tip caught, Steve Smith Sr., and he's going touchdown, Ravens!
Steve Smith goes for over 100 and 2 touchdowns. The Ravens win.
He's a happy man. This is a nail. Hit him in a coffin. You're dead. Take your ass back to Carolina.
And he tells him,
make sure you mow my lawn, too, while you're out there. Keep it clean for me.
That's like the ultimate last word.
I'm a little apprehensive even talking about Steve Smith because I'm afraid he'll see this.
This should absolutely be higher. The way that he left the Panthers,
let's go.
I felt like that was so disrespectful.
Should be safe in our
I think you guys are very brave for putting him on the list at all.
The number 9 bitter ending. Andy Reid gets the axe.
Time's a-wasting. 4 receivers in the shotgun. Back goes McNabb into the end zone. Intercepted, and that is it. This game is over. A painful, painful defeat.
You say Andy Reid, everyone goes, clock management.
Time management. Time management. Andy Reid thought he had a little more time left, but he was always bad at clock management.
I goofed.
Nobody could stomach another botched play call.
Look at this.
Nobody could stomach another playoff loss.
And it's intercepted. And with that ends the dream for this season.
No!
For the sake of the emotional health of this entire area, things better change for the Eagles.
His departure's really weird because he won so much.
In 14 seasons, Andy Reid helped the Birds soar to 9 postseasons, 6 division titles,
And they win the NFC East.
and 4 straight NFC championship games.
A run of consistency and excellence that they have rarely, if ever, had in franchise history, and yet it's not enough.
All anyone ever wants to talk about is Andy Reid didn't get to the Super Bowl and win it. In my book, he won more than anybody in Philadelphia history. He's a great, great coach.
Andy Reid deserves all of the accolades.
Having the most regular season wins in franchise history, it's like having the most Monopoly money. You know what that gets you? Nothing.
Last season, it was the ugliest scene I've ever seen at the Link.
This was as bad as the score indicates. I mean, he was so wide open, there was no one within 10 yards. The Eagles finished with a 4-12 record. What a mess. Have you ever seen a team self-destruct like this?
People were just so fed up with seeing him on the sideline as Eagles head coach. Fans wanted him gone, and the day they fired him, there were tears of joy in the city.
Andy Reid's exit was like a slow, painful death.
I can't take no more. It's hurting my heart. I'm still young. I shouldn't have to live through this.
This was like a marriage that everybody knew was over before the two people in the marriage knew, and they were staying together for the kids.
There was a lot of love for Andy Reid in his time in Philadelphia, but all the heartbreak was just too much. So, can time really heal all wounds?
I think the Eagles fans realized they had it pretty good under Andy Reid.
Imitation's the most sincere form of flattery. The Eagles did the best they could to bring in Andy Reid 2.0.
Look at the one across.
They realize Andy Reid is what they wanted all along, and they get Doug Peterson, who's Andy Reid's assistant. And they settle in with Doug Peterson, and he wins them the Super Bowl. It's kind of a sad love story.
The number 8 bitter ending. Bill Belichick, Jets, New York.
At this time, I'd like to introduce Bill Belichick, who has an announcement to make.
I think he took the job, and then he realized that it was the Jets, and he was like, right away, like, oh no, this will never work out. This is a dumb decision.
I've decided to resign as the head coach of the New York Jets.
The Jets are perpetually terrible, and so he left, which is the smartest thing he ever could have done. And I'm a diehard Jet fan.
The story of our number 8 bitter ending begins with the happy days of Bill Belichick and Bill Parcells. First in New York and later in New England.
And to the greatest coach in the history of the game in modern times, thank you.
But the happy days in New England didn't last. And the Big Apple soon beckoned.
What we're going to be doing at the Jets is hiring Bill Belichick as our head coach, effective today. At such time in the future that Bill Parcells is able to assume the role of head coach, Bill Belichick will become the assistant head coach.
Belichick's first stint as Jets head coach lasted 6 days. 3 years later, he was in the market again.
When Parcells got wind that Belichick could possibly go back to New England, Parcells' enmity for, Robert Kraft flared up.
So Parcells stepped down as Jets head coach.
He tried to do everything he could to keep Belichick. And Bill Belichick was gonna be the coach.
The New York media in that 24 hours panned the hire. He was a curmudgeon in Cleveland and a control freak. It's not gonna work here.
He was our coach for a day. A day. One day.
He resigned.
He wrote his resignation on a napkin. A napkin.
Wrote the letter because, for any of you know me, know I'm computer illiterate, and I have to do what I'm comfortable doing. And
why we don't have Bill Belichick's napkin that he resigned on hanging in the Hall of Fame is anybody's guess.
It's the greatest drop the mic in NFL history, isn't it?
I doubt there would be any questions at this point.
Everybody talks about the torture of Jets fans.
What a mess.
And they have been tortured.
I can't believe we blew that play.
There is nothing as painful in Jets or any team's history as having had Bill Belichick as your coach and him saying, nah, I'm good. And then his next stop, winning 1 billion Super Bowls.
The number 7 bitter ending. Joe Montana and the 49ers break up.
Number 7. This is number 1. This is number 1. All others pale. Joe Montana leaving the 49ers was like Jesus leaving the tomb.
Joe Montana, I'll say he is the best who's ever played the game.
Where is he? What happened?
Wow, that caught me off guard.
Joe Montana demanding to be traded is crazy. It's kind of like Joe Montana demanding to sponsor Skechers step-ups. Oh, that happened?
I mean, that was devastating. That was Joe Montana's city. No one wanted to see him leave.
We want Joe! We was and he always will be.
So when you break up with someone ever, girlfriend, wife, divorce, football team, it's always ugly, but there was no breakup worse than Joe Montana leaving the San Francisco 49ers with a perfect Super Bowl record and 3 MVPs.
39 seconds remain. Back to throw Montana. Stepped up throws.
The performance by Joe Montana was just almost unbelievable. The team of the decade? Watch him, and he's so cool about it.
Joe Cool's departure from San Francisco was anything but smooth.
Leonard Marshall coming from the backside.
A series of injuries
Montana up, but woozy.
and a hotshot replacement loomed over the legend.
The Leonard Marshall hit essentially took him out for 2 years. But it was so unfair that Montana, who had done so much, defined the franchise.
Caught by Clark.
And he's relegated to bystander.
This was cold-blooded. People talk about Bill Belichick being cold-blooded.
Can I challenge that?
No.
Bill Walsh was cold-blooded.
Well, our strength is at quarterback, but our problem is we have two, and there's a quarterback controversy developing.
It was the threat of Steve to keep Joe at a pinpoint level. Walsh played that up.
If you want to talk to someone who wants to play, come talk to me.
It was the smart thing to do. You had a great young quarterback who was ready to take over and a guy that just didn't want to leave. We want you to groom him. And 2 years later, he's like, I'm not done grooming. You're done grooming.
At a certain point, it ends. And when it ends, you can do it in 2 different ways. You can walk away, fist held high, we did it. Or you can walk away going, hey, can anyone give me a ride?
Joe's journey didn't end in ultimate triumph or devastating defeat. Just 1 year after going to Kansas City, Montana took the Chiefs to the AFC Championship game.
Hey! Montana Magic is back!
But no game was sweeter than getting revenge against his old team.
High formation play fake by Montana. Wants to throw wide open. Joe Valerio has a touchdown! Back to throw is Montana. Fires for the end zone. Keith Cash. Touchdown, Kansas City!
I think you could see it in that reaction. He wants his win today.
There's no cooler way for Joe Montana to stick it to the Niners.
I would put it higher. I mean, if you are double-crossing the greatest quarterback of his era, that's got to get higher.
That was the worst departure of all time, bar none, not even close.
The number 6 bitter ending. Bo Jackson breaks his hip.
Oh.
Ugh.
Ooh.
Now,
Bo.
you know much about Bo? You remember Come much on. about Bo? I know about Bo with the hip. Think of Bo, you think of the hip, unfortunately. But Bo's the best athlete ever.
It's like little kids chasing a grown man.
It's no secret that Bo Jackson was one of the most electrifying athletes of his generation, excelling in both professional football and baseball.
I was convinced he was the greatest thing I had ever seen in my entire life.
Pitch goes to Bo, trying to get around the left side. There's too much humanity there. He reverses, coming back to the right.
He was spectacular, whether it's running up a tunnel in Seattle,
He may not stop till Tacoma. He's gone. Portland.
running through people or running around people. He was just wow.
He was the player that made other NFL players look slow.
I'm afraid that's nothing more than sheer unadulterated speed.
You don't see that unless you're playing Tecmo Bowl with Bo Jackson.
Bo Jackson in his first ever postseason activity. Pitch to Bo, outside right, turn it up the side, 30, 35, cut back 40, a pack chasing him at the 50, when he puts it in the afterburner mode. Holy Toledo! Bo sort of twisted as he went down in the grasp of Walker.
I remember watching that playoff game and going, oh, no big deal.
Bo has gotten up slow and he has gone back down. Oh boy.
You don't think for a minute that this is going to end Bo Jackson's career.
Bo Jackson does not appear to be seriously injured.
It was like a bad ending to a movie. I want to Scooby-Doo that.
To think that he walks off of the football field and never walks back onto it is a nightmare. It haunts you.
Bo's exit's the best thing that ever happened to Bo. Now Bo is a mythological creature that we're telling bedtime stories about.
Thank God for Bo Jackson.
There's no bad memory of Bo. We all wish for more. It's a good exit.
Bo's bitter end is the only injury to make our list because we're left with the burning question of what could have been.
You cannot tell me that he wouldn't have been the greatest if he had played an entire career.
Ran for 950 yards in half a season. What Bo could have done healthy is the greatest what if, I think, in NFL history.
Bo Jackson laying waste to the Kansas City defense.
Bo Jackson's is like a bummer for everything. It's a bummer for football, it's a bummer for baseball, it's a bummer for commercials, it's a bummer for Saturday morning cartoons.
I feel like if Bo Jackson kept playing, eventually we would have been like, remember the season that Bo Jackson played when he didn't wear pads and he went for 2,000 yards? You remember when Bo Jackson ran for a 95-yard touchdown backwards?
What a player.
If that's not on your list, somebody made the wrong list.
And now, the number 5 bitter ending. Terrell Owens leaves everyone.
He should be higher, if only for the hybrid driveway workout and press conference.
Oh, no question.
Some would say this is starting to become a circus.
It's never been done before or since, and it is one of the great all-time goodbyes.
I ain't heard the team.
T.O. is a pioneer.
Terrell Owens is one of the greatest receivers.
Double coverage, it doesn't matter. The guy's a superstar.
He's going to the Hall of Fame.
Start pouring the mold for the statue.
I've never seen a wide receiver with that kind of ability. But he was just as talented as tearing teams apart.
I'm in a league of my own. They ain't ready for me.
How many teams was he on?
A lot, right? Actually, Terrell spent 8 years with the Niners, and then...
Ravens after us, I think.
That was rhetorical.
Yeah.
Just think about it.
Oh.
Man, give me the ball. I don't want to hit nothing.
It went bad for him in San Francisco.
Give me the ball.
Then it went bad for him for about a minute and a half in Baltimore, which is how he ended up in Philadelphia, where it went really bad.
We gave Terrell every opportunity.
And then he went to Dallas, and this is going to shock you guys, didn't go well there.
You're forgetting the Bills.
Oh my God, the Bills! And the Bengals.
I don't remember the exits as much as I remember the nonsense leading up to the exits.
Terrell Owens is going to the star. Do it again. Oh,
It's my team.
He's crying for Tony Romo.
It's my quarterback.
That's my quarterback. I was like, really, Terrell?
I told you, they hate to love me.
But I kind of loved when he would score a touchdown and he would take out a pen. What is that? It was funny.
Is that a pen in his sock?
When he would eat popcorn. When he did Ray Lewis's dance. You know, remember he did it? I was like, really?
You gotta have dignity when you're playing this game.
Then it got too much.
Tuesday afternoon, Terrell Owens' private plane landed in Philadelphia.
The roller coaster pattern of our number 5 bitter ending was distilled in a single city.
T.O.'s Eagles career is like watching a 90s rom-com on fast forward. You're just watching like, oh, they fell in love.
T.O.
Oh, now they're crying.
He's got a problem.
Oh, no, they're getting back together.
That's why I want to be here.
And now they got married.
They can't stop. And I'm on half a leg and they can't stop.
Oh, no, now they're going to get a divorce.
Terrell Owens has been suspended.
Oh, she's crying again. And that happened all within like 30 seconds.
Everywhere he went, the story became bigger than his talent.
It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time.
That's the problem.
He went out his last couple of years putting up big numbers, but he just ran out of teams. He ran out of teams before he ran out of talent.
The worst is the last one, because T.O.'s got to like look through the window and be like, hey guys, I can still play. And they're like, no, we got Jericho Cotchery. We're good, T.O.
The number 4 bitter ending. Tom Landry gets the boot from the boys.
Number 4. Oh my God, Jerry Jones' treatment of Tom Landry. Honestly, he's turning in his grave.
In 1989, oil tycoon Jerry Jones purchased the Dallas Cowboys, his first act as owner, bringing an abrupt and bitter end to one of the game's most legendary coaches.
He was Dallas, the guy in the hat on the sideline.
He is the head coach from day one, and 30 years later, he's still there. He has won huge playoff games.
Pearson makes the catch at the 5, touchdown!
And he has won Super Bowls.
Landry, still calm, still collected, will put on another ring.
He has become an icon. He's one of the greatest coaches of all time.
Very tough to go against that Dallas flex defense.
And you basically buy the team and then tell them, hey, clean out your desk.
I think that Buddy Ryan of Philadelphia's got more class than our new owner, Jerry Jones.
Jerry, when he first got that team, man, he meant business. I'm writing the checks. You're fired. You're fired. You're gone. You're gone.
Seeing him cleaning out his office like some run-of-the-mill executive, that was not the way Tom Landry deserved it. But you had a new owner, he knew the coach he wanted to hire. And Jimmy Johnson, there was a famous picture in the Dallas Morning News. They were at a Mexican restaurant, and they put that picture on the front page huge, and you knew right then Jimmy was going to be the coach.
I look up to a man like Tom Landry. I know that there could have been better circumstances as far as me coming into this position.
Jerry Jones is justified in that he got rid of Tom Landry. Just like so many other great coaches, their success starts waning.
You hate to say it, but sometimes there's some truth to it. The game passes people by, even the great coaches. You kind of just saw the Dallas machine just coming apart.
Landry was losing. It was a train wreck at the end.
It goes from bad to worse.
It was time to go. It was changing. I mean, he invented the 4-3 defense. That's how old Tom Landry was. This is how we won the Ice Bowl. Was he there for that?
Watch that star now, come on.
Jerry Jones might not be the Hall of Fame owner without dumping Tom Landry. Like at the time, people hated it, but they needed to do that to move on to the Jimmy Johnson era. It worked out, they won those Super Bowls. So I'm sure there's still some hard feelings in Texas about the way Jerry Jones handled that whole thing.
You can't treat a guy who had meant so much to the city and to the franchise and to the sport the way that Jerry Jones treated him. And I bet you if you ask Jerry, he probably regrets how he let go of Tom Landry.
It was a real mistake.
And I think that one should be number one for how it went down.
As a kid in Waco, Texas, who worshiped the Cowboys, Tom Landry was like God, and God should have made a better exit.
The number 3 bitter ending. Brett Favre leaves Green Bay.
Seems like just yesterday we were here.
Watching him growing up, I'm very confident that we will have the number 1 spot.
I think we all know why I'm here.
Because it wasn't just rude, it was also like bumbling.
I am officially retiring.
It was like this long process, you know? It was like my parents' divorce. I don't want to talk about it. Yes, I do. I'm ready.
Brett Favre was an icon in Green Bay. He was the guy who brought that team back.
Who can throw it better than Brett Favre? This is the best thing that's happened in Green Bay in a long time.
Favre and Reggie White raised them out of the ashes, returned them to glory.
The Vince Lombardi Trophy is coming home where it started.
In 2002, I remember there being, Brett Favre might retire, be ready for this in case it happens.
Favre is being taken out of the game.
This went on year after year after year after year.
In what could very well be,
and it just became kind of a running joke.
His final game in the National Football League.
And for 5 or 6 years, he does this. And every year, he's coming back. My dad would call me. It was a big, big thing every time Favre said he was going to come back. And then you have the year where he says he's done.
I am officially retiring.
I watched the presser. I cried at the presser. I re-watched his tearful press conference, and I cried again. Then I moved on. But then he starts saying he wants to come back again.
5 months after our number 3 bitter ending, Brett Favre was traded to the Jets.
He goes to the Jets, and I was like, great, I have 2 teams now. I've got the Packers, who I've tattooed on my body, and I've got the Jets, who I don't care about, but the New York Brets now. Retires.
And maybe I come down and visit you.
Done.
Have some catfish, Billy Bob.
Don't need to worry about it. And then the rumblings. Well, then there's like private planes being sent to where he lives, and I'm like, well, I don't like the look of this.
What sets our number 3 bitter ending apart,
I promised I wouldn't get emotional,
wasn't the making of the wound, so much as the salt in it.
Leaving the Packers for the Vikings, the hated Vikings, the Vikings of all teams. That's the ultimate salty move.
If you're a Green Bay Packer fan, seeing Brett Favre do this in purple has got to make you sick to your stomach.
He became evil for me. Evil with purple on.
3 touchdowns tonight for Brett Favre against his former team.
Now we must beat him. We must own him. Take his soul from him. And of course, he does what he does which is just be magic.
He might be 40, but Favre is throwing bullets again.
It was surreal. It's the only time I've understood, like, burning things.
I think the one thing that might have saved the relationship is Brett didn't win that Super Bowl with the Vikings.
Intercepted.
A year later, Favre retired for good,
And I'm pretty sure that's his last game at Lambeau. I was at that game.
leaving Lambeau in familiar fashion.
And he threw a pick six. Because what better way for Brett Favre to say goodbye? I don't think there's any question he should be number one. Just because of when it was Favre Watch, day in and day out, my mother was interested in it, and she can't stand football.
I loved him. Loved him. And then what he did to me towards the end, unforgivable.
The number 2 bitter ending. The Browns leave Cleveland.
The atmosphere here is very quiet, very somber. In reality, it is more like a family funeral.
Funeral, yeah. The officials have flip-flopped it due to some of the debris and things that were being thrown out on the field.
Fans are throwing their bench seats on the field. There's nothing more unceremonious than that.
The thing that made it even worse, actually nothing could make it even worse. The reason the Hall of Fame is in Canton, 40 minutes down the road from Cleveland, is it's the birthplace of football. So the idea that a team could ever leave was just absolutely impossible.
An enraged Cleveland Browns fan lighting fire to all of his Browns souvenirs.
The year before, they had made a playoff game.
Touchdown, Browns!
And they'd won. Bill Belichick and Vinny Testaverde beat Bill Parcells and Drew Bledsoe.
Good job, man!
The Browns entered the 1995 season as the hipster pick to win the Super Bowl.
Maybe they are ready to go to the Super Bowl.
Well, they've been singing Super Bowl along the banks of Lake Erie.
But before Cleveland's Week 10 game, owner Art Modell made an announcement.
They announced during the season that they were leaving.
Coming into today, remember, this team was tied for first place, so this news has thrown a hand grenade into their season.
This is something like if somebody's like, hey, I'm leaving you. When? Now? No. Couple of months from now, but I'm letting you know right now that I will eventually be leaving you.
It's one of those things where you don't believe it's real.
26 years season ticket holder. I'm going to cut my seat out.
We had a couple guys that were on that team when they moved.
The few remaining boo the Browns.
They talked about how crazy it was and how angry the fans were.
It might be better for this team to play on the road right now, Bob.
Bomb threats would be called into the facility on a daily basis. They were just mad at everybody.
The Browns are indeed coming to Baltimore.
I always wonder, what if Art Modell didn't decide to move the Browns? When you take a look at all the guys that Belichick had on his staff, like Nick Saban, Kurt Ferenc, Mike Lombardi, Scott Pioli, Thomas Dimitroff, Jim Schwartz, all those guys were on that staff. And you wonder if Modell decides to not move the Browns, that maybe the Cleveland Browns would not know the futility that they know right now.
So the Browns left Cleveland, but left their colors and name like a snakeskin?
It's like a divorce where one of the spouses gets like the house and the kids, and the other one's like, I guess I'll take the memories.
So Cleveland didn't have a team for a couple years there. Maybe it's time to take another couple years off. I mean, they kind of took off 2016 and 17, really.
They can't even win. They can't even win for losing. Losing your team with a championship team being dismantled in front of your eyes with a Hall of Fame coach, perhaps the greatest coach in NFL history. That is the worst part of the movie without the happy ending.
And now, the number 1 bitter ending. The Colts bail on Baltimore.
God, you packed up moving vans? Really? That's how you leave Baltimore, in moving vans?
The Mayflower. Everybody remembers the Mayflower van.
The way they left in the dead of the night, that's one local news shot that will never be forgotten.
You literally packed up and moved in the middle of the night. That's the shadiest thing in the world. You don't want to be dating someone and you're like, hey, where'd you go? Oh, I left. When? How bad do you feel waking up seeing half of your stuff gone?
I only saw my dad cry twice in his life, and that was one of the 2 times.
We're gonna shaft the entire city and all the fans and all the little children.
Relocation of franchises happen all the time. The way that the Colts moved out of Baltimore was one of the most selfish, disgusting, unsentimental moves in sports history.
The Colts had to sneak out of town at night. It degrades a great tradition of the city in football.
Sometimes I pull a Baltimore Colts on girls. I'll be sleeping over, I'll be like, listen, I got a Mayflower van outside. Gonna get it going.
It has to be number 1 because it was arguably the greatest football city in the NFL.
Loyal Baltimore fans are on hand to root for their beloved heroes.
A city in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s that treated the Colts as their family.
Johnny Unitas and John Mackey, and it's a proud, proud history.
Over the ball, come the Baltimore Colts. United, desperation.
You're talking at a time where these guys are your guys, and then here comes Robert Irsay.
In 1984, Colts owner Robert Irsay wanted a new stadium or improvements made to Baltimore Memorial. Once denied, Irsay began to look for a new home.
In Baltimore, it was very shocking. I don't think they thought it was reality.
I have not any intention to move the damn team. If I did, I would tell you about it, okay?
The people that were there, that were alive, that went through it, will never forgive him. They'll never forgive that guy.
Baltimore fans despise the Irsay family. And the fact that they moved the way they did, it still can elicit a really, really negative reaction.
It's totally despicable.
Baltimore spent 13 long years without a professional football team. That is, until the Ravens came along and returned the charmed city to its championship roots.
The older fans would tell you, just because you have a new team, it never takes away from the initial pain.
Yeah, I know there were a lot of hurt feelings, and understandably so in Baltimore, but it's something in Indianapolis that we can deal with it. We can handle that knowing we're a part of the National Football League.
I'm not paid to make those decisions.
I would think this should be number 1, absolutely.
I would put that up there.
They belong at number 1.
So then the Colts lost. So then Baltimore lost a team to Indianapolis and then stole the team from Cleveland. It's like someone cheated on you, and then after you got you stole someone else's wife. Like, it's just the whole thing is weird, right?